Yeah.
Thank you.
Now you're going to do the type 6 prior to the type 3?
Type 3, is that in resident?
Yes.
Yes. Because my understanding on the weather, you guys are doing sort of different. You're doing an all CBT, then you're doing Blackboard, and then you're doing in resident.
Right.
Okay. We're just doing Blackboard, then in resident.
How long is it going to be?
To be determined. The way we've got it planned right now, and you'll see on the syllabus, the distant learning portion, we're shooting between 23 and 30 days. So the syllabus has it laid out for 23 days-ish. Since we've never done it, we're gauging how much time it's actually going to require the students and instructors to facilitate. But we're shooting for less than 30. That's the goal. And then the in-resident portion, 30 days.
I think the resident will be at 32.
How much face-to-face Blackboard time are you going to have?
Don't know. I'm guessing right now, and when we talk about the instructor's role, we're going to talk about what I consider a phased approach. I don't want to put it on the instructors at day 1, 5 January, they're expected to have a certain number of hours per class in front of the students in the distant learning portion. So we're going to do a phased approach and get the instructors and the students accustomed to this learning environment. Eventually, I'd say a minimum, once a week, the instructors will be discussing or breaking the students out into some sort of group activity, at least once a week. How long? I can't imagine them being online for more than an hour in a daytime frame. And so when we get to the scheduling slide, I'll show you why that is. Working with students around the globe, 1 hour is going to be our max per day. But I don't see the instructors.
Every day or once a week is what you said?
Yeah. For now, the only thing I would promise is 1 hour a week, max.
See, because you're going to have the same problem we have with getting manpower to run it.
So we've got to change that. The manpower calculation right now is based on face-to-face time. My proposal is we have to make the manpower based on evaluation time. Because the way I say the formula should be calculated is instead of being...
That's still interactive time.
True.
It's just you're evaluating rather than...
Yeah, so the number of evals times, we'll say 30 minutes per eval per person. That needs to be the new formula. Figuring out how much time does it take to evaluate each distant learning portion.
Yeah. And we're going down the same path.
Right. Take it with Capt.
Okay. How big is your class size going to be for the Blackboard?
They're talking about possibly dual starting. Ideally, we'd keep it the same size as our in-resident course, which is 16. If 16.
16.
If we dual start, then the distant learning portion would be larger.
So that'd be like 36 or 32.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to get started from the beginning, and then obviously this is interactive. I am recording the session for your purposes. I'll post it out there so that anybody that wasn't here, or if you guys want to refer back to your notes, you'll have access to that. You'll have access to the slides and everything that I've given you in the handouts. And basically everything that I've done, I'm going to hand over either way. So it's going to fall on instructors, instructor supervisors, TDE, training managers. As you heard in the meeting that we just came out of, they don't have policies, they don't have regs, they don't have guidance, so we're making this up as we go. So if nothing else, consider this the first draft, and you guys will make it what you want. So this is the overview for the lecture today, I guess, is the course layout. I'm going to give you some examples of how I split it up, how we're going to do evaluations and my proposal to solving that issue, scheduling as well, and then finally talked about the phased approach for the instructors in the distant learning portion specifically. So in the course layout, you'll notice that I gave you 2 handouts. Each of these are syllabi. There's one for the distant learning portion, and there's a separate syllabi for the in-resident portion. Just like you see on any course chart or any document that reviews the entire course, it's laid out by block, by objective, and you have a generic title there. What I want to focus on right now is the distant learning portion, and I want to show you what it actually looks like. So this is the sandbox, blended learning Blackboard website. This is the typical homepage in all Blackboard. Is very similar in that you're going to have on your left-hand side all of your hyperlinks to the course content. The difference that you're going to have as administrators is this little button right here where there's an edit mode. You can turn that on or off, and you'll see what an administrator sees when it's on. You'll see what the students see when it's off. And that'll become in very handy, especially when we talk about giving access to students to certain documents, certain parts of the material. One of the things that we've discussed, for example, is we don't want students to have access to all of the blocks from the very beginning, but rather we want to go synchronous. And so we'll say every week we release one block of material for the students to get access to. And I'll show you how to do that.
So when you say edit mode off, or when you say administrator, is that the term course administrator?
I think both course as well as the system administrator will have this edit mode. I do not believe that users are going to have any sort of edit mode.
Right.
Now, on the left-hand side, all of these are parts of the course. In order to add new things to it, you just simply go to the plus button and add whatever it is that you want, whether it's a hyperlink, a new folder of some sort. I kept this pretty generic because this is the template that every university uses on their Blackboard websites. But I did fill in each one of these links on the left-hand side with information important to our particular course. For now, what I want to show you is here you have the same 5 blocks that you see on your distant learning syllabi. So each one of these lessons is a chunk of material that would be presented to the students, we'll say in a week time frame, or whatever the schedule has. As an example, I want to show you block 5. Each one of the blocks obviously has a list of objectives. Those objectives I just called lessons. What you're seeing here is just a basic module that has the objective statement. It defines to the students what it is that they're going to get in that lesson. Below it, I have the actual material for that lesson. The reason I had them as separate folders is that way the students kind of know progression-wise how far along they are in the week's worth of material. And each one of these folders can be independently manipulated. So just like you have on your shared drives, move the folder to wherever you want, and it takes all of the material inside that folder to any destination you want. If you want to hide it, for example, not give students access to it, you can do that as well. Inside each one of the each one of the objective material folders, I followed the same layout. First thing I have at the very top is a typical lesson plan, where I explain to the students how long they're expected to take in this particular folder and exactly what they're expected to do in that objective. So in this one, there's 3, we'll call them teaching steps, since that's the terminology that we're accustomed to. In reality, the point that I want to focus on right now is that I am using Blackboard as a hub for training that is available in other websites. In this case, we have a website called the Financial Management Distant Learning Center and Distributed Learning Center. And there's plenty of training that is available out there that students can get access to. And they're expected to go out there and complete that training. So it's not in-housed in Blackboard, but rather it's a hyperlink. And you'll see that hyperlink here. So for every lesson and for every step in the lesson, you'll see a corresponding hyperlink to whatever it is that they're required to do. So when they click on that hyperlink, it will take them to the website where they'll be able to complete the training. Now, many people have asked, well, what if we have students that don't have CAT cards or don't have access to certain websites? And that is an issue. We're working with contractors right now so that they can actually download the training that's available on these sites around the Air Force, and we can upload a copy of those slides to this link. So that way, in the case that an instructor has several students who don't have access to the site, they may be international officers, they may be so new they don't have certificates or whatever, that's fine. The instructor can send them the slide deck so they can meet the requirement. In the end, the ideal would be that we collect the training certificates from the students as proof that they completed it. But if that's not available, we can have other measurement devices, whether it be a quiz or some sort of discussion. But each lesson plan is going to lay out exactly what the expectations are in the time frame for those students. So coming back to my slide deck, this phase 1 distant learning, I consider a showcase for computer-based training and web-based training that is out there in the Air Force. In our career field, there is a lot of training that is available. So this is just an example of some of the sites, and in fact what you'll see on the distant learning syllabus on the second page is actually there is a list of different resources that we're citing for training purposes. So in different activities, group projects, or parts of the lesson, students will be accessing each one of these websites or resources for different types of assignments.
I have some familiarity with the course that tried this, is doing this. And one of the problems, and I'm just wondering, have you seen it yet, where links are broken fairly quick because people are always messing with the sites and things like that, and it invariably has caused problems.
That's a great question, and my proposal is that each one of these little modules here is actually a hyperlink to those specific trainings or those websites. So just like we update course curriculum material hard copy, if an instructor or a student notes that there is some change or a training no longer exists, then they'd let TDE know so that they can basically come in here, edit the hyperlink, and then change that reference point. Or if necessary, delete it altogether. The idea of having the backup copy slide deck is really kind of the fail-safe.
Well, I guess that goes back to if we were to delete it because that training
Right.
is gone.
Normally you never find it till after the fact.
Right. Then our lesson plans, I understand
They'll need to be adjusted, right?
that's an issue that we're going to have to deal with just like anything else.
And policy,
There's a lot of links.
it is. And policy-wise, what I'm encouraging our instructors, instructor supervisors, TDE to do is if we propose to AETC a new standard for lesson plans that's more flexible for the instructors, that'll work out better. But if we try to apply the same methodology that we currently have with in-resident courses for the mandated left-hand side, right-hand side lesson plans that have to be signed off annually.
Well, for the distant learning portion of it, my understanding is we don't need a lesson plan, we just need a POI.
Great, even better.
Well, wait a minute. Is it instructor facilitated though by some degree?
If it's instructor facilitated, yes, we'll need a lesson plan, but as far as this right now is not necessarily instructor facilitated.
Sure.
Didn't you say you were gonna have interaction?
I did say that.
Then I gotta,
So-
yeah.
Well, in that area, wherever the facilitation is gonna occur, yeah, we'll have to have a lesson.
So we'll have
plan
to
for that
have a
area.
broad liberal interpretation of that.
Right.
We'll go on with that.
Okay. The next part of the distant learning portion that some of the students will be expected to do, as an example, there are several different interviews that the students will be conducting as part of the course. So we're assuming the students are already going to be at home station and they're going to be logging into Blackboard occasionally during the week. Well, one of the assignments that they could be participating in is going and finding a subject matter expert on the specific topic that they're studying at that point in time, and then reporting to the instructor the notes from those interviews. Now, not every kind of SME is going to be available at every base where our students would possibly be. Therefore, we're going to provide the students collaborative websites such as DCO and host, in some cases, SME recordings or interviews online for the students that don't have access to somebody at their location. They may be in a geographically separated unit that doesn't have, we'll say, a contracting office. Or, there's a million different scenarios where somebody's going to say, that person or that type of individual doesn't exist in my location. How am I supposed to do an interview? But in the end, the instructors are going to be that facilitator connecting the dots, basically getting them to some SME who they could possibly interview and complete the assignment. Another portion of the distant learning is going to be case studies. So there are several different libraries as well as resources that we have available that are published within the Air Force that we're going to utilize for case studies. The nice thing about the case studies, as opposed to the rigid lesson plans, is that case studies can be refreshed regularly to keep the material and the issues current. So we'll have a study, we'll say, on fiscal law issues or anti-deficiency acts. And rather than telling students a specific case that they have to go and research, we'll give them a generic topic and say, go find an incident where such and such happened. And they will go to these resources that we provide them, which are also in those links that I gave you, and research these case studies and then report back to the class.
So we're not going to actually have excerpts from those particular publications?
Yes, in some cases we do.
Okay, now, Air Force Comptroller denied us copyright.
Okay, I'm sure we can.
We tried it last FIMSOC go-around, and they simply denied us copyright privileges.
I'm pretty sure we could work that.
Now, what would be the copyright issue involved in what we're looking at here?
Well, if they're going to be using excerpts from this in their material.
No, they're just going to read it and.
Now, yeah, if we're just going to read it, there's no problem. But that's why I asked, are we going to have excerpts from these particular publications?
Yes.
But these are gonna be links to these publications and not really excerpts into the course.
I'll give you the example that I have built for you already.
Yeah, the Air Force Comptroller put out by ASMC, which is a private organization.
No, this is the actual Blackboard sandbox you're in now?
Yes. So for the past month, this has been my ugly baby.
That's a pretty big.
Who did you have to see to get in there, Carly?
No. This one was actually given us from Major Howard before he deployed. So he was at the ATC A3 level, somewhere up there, policy, working with Q, Ms. Trent.
Now, will you be able to take what you've done in this and transfer it to our contracted Blackboard?
We haven't done it, but yes, there is a function to export and then import. So
That was one of the things that was said, they wanted to know what files you wanted to go over to the working.
yes. So what I'll show you at the end is how to export the material, and it creates this enormous zip file. I have yet to import it into another Blackboard license. So that's the next step, is to figure out how that all works, to make sure that what we have in the sandbox actually reflects what's in the new.
He's counting down days.
You know about the Army site, right? For large files across the internet?
Amadeus, yes. Okay, so in answer to your question about case studies.
Yeah.
So this is block 3, objective 2 alpha. Students can be given excerpts, or basically just a PDF file that they can download of a specific topic or an article, something of that sort. And so in this case, you have an instructor copy, which may have highlights and certain things that they're looking for from the students, and then you have the student copy, which is just the blank excerpt that they're expected to take and work with. So in answer to your question, yes, we are taking excerpts and putting it into the Blackboard material. So if copyright's an issue, then we're going to have to address that, especially with the policy folks. Mr. Click and Captain Grayson, I only have one more copy of this, but let me give you what I've got.
I got two of the last.
There's 2 different rubrics. One of them is for exercise, and the other is for discussion boards. And in fact, that's the next topic. So one of the ways that we're going to use online collaboration is by the discussion board function. So anybody that's taken an online course is probably familiar with discussion boards. Basically a blog where people can upload comments, and you can also upload files, which is neat, but once you get multiple threads going, it can be overwhelming very quickly. What I've done is, in specific assignments, we'll say in block 1, lesson 1, or objective 1 alpha, students are assigned these specific questions. And so what they'll do is they'll click on this thread and respond to that specific thread in that specific assignment. What that does for the instructors is it consolidates all of the discussion into one single thread. So it's easier for evaluation purposes. That's why my recommendation is that we've got to change the Manning formula from FaceTime hours to allow the instructors the time necessary to do a proper evaluation. When I get into the evaluation slide, I'll talk a little bit more about the matrix that you're looking at.
As you're on this, really quick, I'm just kind of curious, on the discussion forums, is it blind until they post?
You can adjust it. So there's different functions, again, like they talked about in the previous meeting. In fact, there's an overwhelming number of functions that you are allowed to do, where, as they said, there's an issue with allowing students to edit something after they've posted versus just making a new thread. So there's a lot of things that you can do. I've left it the generic template the way that it always was. So they edit, make their post, but once it posts, it's there. I haven't figured out if the students can edit after they post. But the way I've set it up right now is at least every thread corresponds with a specific objective and lesson. And I did that for the sanity of the instructors who are going to be looking at these threads. Because what I didn't want was each student creating their own thread and then each topic another thread and having the instructors have to go out and farm all that information in order to complete the grading. I didn't want that. So for the ease of the instructors, I made one thread per lesson or objective so we can consolidate that specific assignment. And you'll also notice that the instructions to the students are the exact same regardless of the discussion board. Those can be adjusted, of course. So if there are some topics that require more wording than others, then please, adjust those appropriately. But this is just a generic template that I put out there for us to work with. Blackboard already has a wiki type program inside of it. And for those that aren't accustomed to wiki type projects, basically it allows multiple people access to the same document so that they can manipulate it. This is going to be critical for group projects, which is a big thing that our career field manager absolutely wants involved in the distant learning portion of the course. So throughout the course there are small group projects that they're going to need to work on and submit to the instructor as one single package. So again, for the sanity of the instructors aren't going to be in charge of version control. That's the responsibility of the students. The students will produce one final version to the instructor for grading. In Blackboard, just like we did for the discussion board, you'll see on here on the left-hand side, wikis, team assignments. So for particular blocks or objectives that have team assignments, you'll see here the team assignment for block 1, and then inside this wiki page, you'll see a specific page assigned to each one of the teams. So I've built it right now assuming that we have a maximum of 5 teams on any one project. In the end, you can adjust how many teams you have, you can adjust how many projects you do per block, but the way I've built it is one project, group project, per block, and 5 teams. That's it, just for the sake of simplicity. But those are pre-built, so the students, once they get into their wiki site, will say they have a Word document that they need to publish. Well, all the students will be able to work off the same exact document, and it will keep version control for them, and they can write comments on it, and that doesn't involve the instructor at all. You will be completely autonomous. You'll be able to monitor that. You can make comments yourselves, but you will not be in charge of seeing version 1 versus version 7 and trying to grade all of that.
The instructor has control on who's attached to what team?
No. So that's where, at the beginning of an objective, you're just going to have to delegate to the students and say,
Your team 1.
yeah, your team 1, your team 2. So that will require a little bit of coordination.
Integrity, not to bounce in and copy and paste.
Exactly.
Out of curiosity, the last AU supervisor course I went to was quite involved. So I'm seeing that this is quite involved. Your course syllabus, have you started working on a course syllabus for the students so that before they start the course they can see where all they're going? And you don't have to address that now, but that's obviously going to be a very,
Helpful tool.
yeah,
So-
very,
As far as the syllabus, the same syllabus that I provided you is electronic here on the syllabus link, and it is available for the students to download.
okay.
So they're going to have the same references as far as timeline and which objectives they're supposed to complete. But they're going to find that information in the lessons themselves. So the syllabus doesn't go down into each lesson plan.
Yeah, because that's
Okay.
where I was. This thing gave me a
Right.
broad overview of the entire course And then as I went through it, sometimes I had to refer back to
Right.
that syllabus and go, oh, this is where I need to be. And it was very critical that it was there.
Understood. To be honest with you, that information is archived right here in what Mr. McGinley was calling before the plan of instruction. So I built the plan of instruction based on the current template course, which is basically consolidated into the syllabus. What I did steal from Air University were some introductory videos that actually explain how to use some of those DCO and Blackboard functions. Mr. Mike Hagan provided this video. I don't think it's going to work right now because I'm recording in DCO.
Yeah.
But in the end, there's a video here that plays and it walks students through some of the basic function of Blackboard and their expectations as far as discussion boards and other things. It might play.
How many instructors are you thinking you're gonna need to monitor 16 students?
If we go off of my formula, I mean, we'd have to break it out, but you're at least going to need one instructor dedicated to the online course. You can't expect an instructor to manage the online course and the in-resident course at the same time. There's no way. There's too many assignments that need to be evaluated, and there's
So
too much
one
interaction.
instructor can actually do a Blackboard course with 16 students in it.
Hypothetically.
But we may have.
We've never done it before. Hypothetically.
In the civilian community, that's the way you always see it done. And I say that because having attended college courses where Blackboard was the primary,
True.
that's all they had. Now, in AU's case, because they used the DCO Blackboard combination, are you using DCO any of it in this?
Great.
What's that?
Thank you for the segue.
Oh,
So
DCO, yes.
this is where we're going to integrate the video portion of the course. We're going to have not only instructors interacting with the students, but also subject matter experts, where, as we said before, we may have those interview situations where some students don't have access to somebody that they need to interview there at their home station. So an instructor could schedule one of the subject matter experts a certain time frame to brief the students as a whole. And the students could do their interaction and interview during that DCO briefing. The challenge with DCO that I've found so far is, one, we can't get an organizational DCO box. It's not like an email. So every single instructor has to have their own DCO account because it's CAC enabled or password enabled. And it links back to your specific email. So with that, it's going to take time for instructors as well as instructor supervisors and TDE to be accustomed to the functions in DCO. So later when I come back to instructor roles, I'll explain why I honestly think that a phased approach is going to be the best way to roll out this new course. As opposed to live interaction, we do have recordings available. One of the recording libraries that we have is the Defense Financial Management Leadership 21 series, which some of our instructors are already familiar with because they've seen these recordings. They date all the way back, I think, down to 2007, where we've had recordings from senior leadership within our career field, and there's an archive of their videos as well as their slide decks, biographies, etc. Some of those are great examples of specific topics that we're covering in the material. And it could fall under, we'll say, a guest speaker program. The other option is, of course, YouTube, where there have been a series of videos that we've recorded in-house here at the schoolhouse using our own webcams, and we've posted out there to our own little BIFMOC YouTube channel. So now we have hyperlinks to some of our senior leaders' town hall meetings or briefings that they've done here locally that we've posted out there, and we've provided links from Blackboard to the YouTube site for the students to access. There may be issues in the future where some students' computers from their home stations don't access YouTube, which is a problem. But there are other places where we can upload that same media. I think there's one called MillTube, BlueTube. There's various options. And even inside of Blackboard, you can upload videos. But through experience, it does take a long time to upload videos into Blackboard, and it does make the size of your course much larger. And so it's much more difficult to transfer from the sandbox into the live server. Now, last but not least, the instructor-facilitated sessions. So here's where I propose that instructors have a role in the distant learning portion. And this is what makes it different than any of the online courses that perhaps we've been in involved with the militaries thus far. The instructors are going to have a facilitator role. So it's not going to be the typical lecture and then evaluation that we may be accustomed to. There may not even be much discussion beyond whatever students put into their chat box, because we can't guarantee that students are going to have some sort of webcam or microphone or any ability to communicate to the instructor aside from simply watching the instructor and then typing into the chat box. So my proposal is that instructors would have a role in introducing or concluding objectives, kind of summarizing what were the main points that the students needed to obtain in the distant learning lesson. So like I said before, those lessons are basically one folder, one objective, and it could be covering an hour to 24 hours worth of material. Hopefully the instructors would be able to explain group projects and assign students their roles prior to them opening up their material and getting started on it. And then last but not least, recapping an entire block, so we're talking multiple objectives, prior to their evaluation. Now, segueing into evaluations, I gave you two handouts. Both of these were provided by Air University. There's an evaluation rubric for both exercises as well as discussion board. So I'm going to refer to the discussion board one first. The first and easiest way to evaluate students is by participation. So we can make it required that one, students make a posting in the discussion board. And it has to be a certain length. Two, that they have to respond to other students. So by simply participating, they kind of check the box. They got it. A more in-depth evaluation of what their content is would follow this rubric, where there's 6 grading criteria, and you'll see that they're weighted. So some of the 6 have, we'll say, 30% of the weight, where the others have only 10%. The way I propose that we utilize these evaluations each objective is going to be a SAT or an unsat. So there may be 3-4 teaching steps in each lesson plan. One of those teaching steps or one of those evaluations would be the discussion board. If they get a SAT or an unsat on the discussion board, that would determine if they get a SAT or an unsat on that objective. And then we would just record that on the 667s like we do in the normal in-resident course. And the student will either pass or not pass that block of instruction. Now there's a myriad of what-if scenarios, or we have washback issues, or how do we catch somebody up, how do we do SIA? There's a lot of things I don't know. But this is what I propose as a beginning for how we could evaluate students' participation. And that's why I also say that instructors' time can no longer be measured by the number of face-to-face hours that they're going to have in this blended environment. It's got to be based on the amount of time the instructors have to evaluate and provide feedback to the students, because that's not going to be the face-to-face anymore. The second rubric that you see is for exercises. Now there's different kinds of exercises. We have individual projects as well as group projects. But I do believe that the exercise grading tool rubric is simple enough and generic enough that you can apply it regardless if it's a group or individual project. Now, of course, if there's a group project, you may want to add some criteria, for example, participation in the group. There may be some sort of peer-to-peer evaluation that has some sort of grade. But in the end, to make it simple, I propose that it's a SAT or an unsat. You either meet or do not meet that objective and that requirement to move on to the next block. It's going to be a challenge to create the evaluation system, but I think this is a good starting point.
So looking at this, the A plus, B, that needs to be wiped out, and it has to be a go, no-go kind of column.
Or you could just say 60% or better is a go. 70% or better is a go.
Yeah, 70% of that. We'll stick with the 70%.
50% or better is a go.
No,
But
let's stick with
my suggestion is use the grading matrix as it is, and then make a standard 70% is either a satisfactory or 70% or lower is unsatisfactory. For the simplicity of the instructors, because I honestly want them to focus more on making sure the students get it than worrying about managing the administrative side of the Blackboard material.
Well, I understand, but I'm still, and I know we're on new cutting edge technology here and all like this, but we still got the requirements of 2641 that I want to try to keep
Agreed.
pretty close, because they're going to come back and that's what they're going to look at.
Yeah.
Even though we're,
Criteria. Yeah, going along with what he's talking about in regards to go, no go, is because we're looking at each one of these criteria. Is it a 70% in each criteria, or is it an overall 70%?
I'd say both. So you can have, we'll say, in one lesson or one objective, you have, we'll say, 3 assignments or 3 things that they're supposed to do: discussion board, an exercise, an individual, and a group project. Well, they'd have to get a 70% average on each one of them to get an overall satisfactory 70% for that objective, is what I'm saying. But in the end, the instructors would only record per objective. You're either a SAT or an unsat.
Well, per block.
Well, in each block, yeah, just like I've got here, you'd have recorded per objective whether they have a satisfactory for that objective, and then overall for the block, they either passed the block or they didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it would be an astronomical effort on the instructor's side if we had to track per lesson plan, every teaching step and every assignment, what their percentage was.
No, what I was talking about is looking at this rubric, and you have, what, 6 criteria?
Right.
So dealing with, this is per assignment.
Yes.
Okay. So meanwhile, if, for instance, on course concepts and support, they may have dipped down to 68%, just throwing out a figure. And administrative, they may have gotten an 83%, which averages out to better than 70. So is that what we're talking about, or they have to get a 70% in each criteria?
70% in each lesson or assignment. That
Not each
entire,
criteria.
yeah,
Okay.
not on
That's
each
what I'm
criteria.
asking.
Not each criteria, you're right,
Okay.
per assignment.
So it's just an average of 70%.
Right.
Got it.
And hence the reason why I think reevaluating how we do manpower is going to be critical for pushing forward in blended learning. Otherwise, we are going to kill our manpower.
We need to get you cross-trained out of that now.
Okay.
I like your example of where we're gonna need to go, but
It's going to be it's going to be hard.
manpower's gonna have a tough time.
Agreed. That's why, again, I think if we propose to them what we would like, it will work out better for us. If we wait for them to come down with a manpower decision and policy, we're going to get axed.
Now, is it going to be holding true that they told us 5 to 6 years of this study, this dealing with distant learning, before they ever really develop a formula?
That's what I remember hearing, yes.
And hoping that they're not going to take away, go ahead. Take away from our current manpower.
Well, we digressed with this discussion because it's totally outside of what
Right.
anybody here can do anything about.
Okay.
Per se.
Since we're talking about how often the instructors would be face-to-face with the students or interacting with them live, we obviously have an issue with the time zones. We're going to have students that are farmed out to home stations across the world. Within our time zone, Central Time Zone, our regular schedule from 06 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that means in USAFE and PACAF, they're literally on opposite ends of the clock. So my proposal is that if we're going to do any facilitated sessions, we hold those sessions at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for about 1 hour. What that would require is, since we don't have any civilians that would be in USAFE or PACAF, we would have military. We would require the military to sign in at 11 p.m. in East USAFE, which would be Germany. Okay? 9 p.m. if they were in Great Britain, Spain. If they are in East PACAF, so I'm talking Alaska, Hawaii, it'd be 11 a.m. West PACAF, so Yokota, Guam, Okinawa, 6 a.m. That fits within our working schedule, and it is feasible. It wouldn't be comfortable, but it is feasible in their schedule as well.
That's usually a small percentage to begin with.
Great. The alternative would be making a specific class that would be, we'll say, USAFE, but trying to get enough manning within a 1 year time frame to fill a class in one MAGCOM would be very difficult. So my suggestion is we're going to be working with military. And so we're going to have to set the policy up from the very beginning of, and when they enroll in this course, that there's going to be understanding that live sessions are going to be available at specific time frames, regardless of when the students are up or not. So they're gonna have to adjust their work schedule as military to be able to log in.
Now, on your course, are they gonna be totally dedicated to this course and this course only, or are they gonna be expected to work at their work centers?
Great question. Let me show you this. One of our steals from the Air University was actually a memorandum that was written specifically for that purpose. It's called the Corsi Memo. Someone from Headquarters Air Force A1 by the name of Corsi actually published a memorandum requiring supervisors accommodate their TDY students to enroll and participate in their online courses. Especially since this is going to be tech training where they're expected to fit into a pipeline schedule, it's going to be even more critical than before. Currently, Headquarters Air Force Financial Management, our career field, is also looking into creating their own version of this Corsi memo. But this memo right here is already provided to us as a template that we can send to the student as well as their supervisor so that they understand this is their job. Now, we have had the debate, how much can we expect the students to actually be online completing the coursework in a given day? All 8 hours? 2 hours? We came to a happy medium, 4 to 6 hours. Okay? But in the end, each student is going to kind of dictate how quickly or how slowly they work through this material. And honestly, there's going to be some students that are just going to whiz through some of the computer-based training, but that's going to reflect in their assignments and their lack of understanding. So,
Well, unless they catch it quick.
agreed. But
Just like in real school, you know what I'm saying? Some people catch it, some people never study.
That's
They get
true.
good grades, some people study their butts off.
the lessons that we've learned just in-house from our own distant learning courses that we've done is the biggest challenge is getting home station supervisors, superintendents to actually enforce whatever this agreement would be. This is just a piece of paper,
So these people are gonna be out of pocket for 3 months.
yes, which they already are. But we want them at least a portion of those 3 months to be at their duty station, but out of pocket to their home station. So that's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
And to clarify, SACFM isn't doing a memo on how often they'll attend course or anything like that. It's A1 and A3's job to come up with the actual distance learning TDY in residence or localized training. So we're not going to reinvent the wheel. We want them to do their job.
You want them to what now?
Do their job. A1 and A3 will do their job. We're not going to create a policy that says you'll spend this many hours training. It's just you will be in this course, but a policy already is out there that says you'll do the course. It's no different than the residential. Yeah.
Okay. Now, this scheduling portion is just based off of the first draft of the syllabus that we've created. So we're shooting for 23 to 30 days in the distant learning portion. Comes out to 5 or 6 weeks. We did not include weekends or compressed work schedule Fridays in that schedule. So we're expecting students to be available 5 days a week for 5 to 6 weeks to finish their online course. At the same time, we don't expect instructors to be doing those 1-hour sessions every single day either. But sometime during those 5 to 6 weeks, they will be introducing or concluding a block, introducing or concluding a project, and that we would fit somewhere in the curriculum, however it flows. I can't guarantee it's going to be every Monday or every Thursday. It's just going to be wherever the block starts and finishes. Now, I do suggest that there be a minimum of 3-day travel in between the end of the distant learning portion and the beginning of the in-resident portion.
Right.
If we don't have a buffer, we're going to have a nightmare trying to fill the slots in the in-resident portion. Another scheduling issue that we've obviously addressed, Mr. Click, and it's going to take some work, is our Guard Reserve and then our international officers. Of how they're going to complete the distant learning portion, where they're going to be, and how they're going to log in. So that is yet to be solidified.
Well, I thought Blackboard was,
It's .com.
access, it's not, it's not column, so you don't have to worry about getting into
Well,
the
they're
other
not-
computer.
There's other capabilities.
But they're not on orders possibly during this time.
They have to be put on orders. So
Right.
it's in the, if they're just 10 in the military. Yeah. So they can do it from the home or they can do it from the home station. But again, it's already in the regs that they'll attend training in the military capacity. So it's not, we don't have to worry about following it.
Just really,
That's a guard bill.
yeah, that's a guard reserve management issue there. Now, international, I figure they're gonna show up here and
Yeah.
somehow.
If they tried to log on from their remote locations, they would obviously be limited to some of the material that they're not gonna have access to. There are DoD websites
Planes
that
and stuff, right?
then they're not gonna get into. There are a lot of capabilities that they can access. And so it would sort of be a limited completion of the distant learning portion. And if we're gonna create, if you talk to Mr. Cooks over at the international office, another issue that he's going to address with you, Mr. Click, at some point is whether this redefines, I think it's called the Mazel number. So there's a code that identifies our course and it gives us a certain price. So when they go out and contract with whichever international country wants to bring people here, there's a price tagged to our course.
That's part, Captain, that's part of the SDO process, foreign disclosure process, so, AFSAT will be part of that foreign disclosure process.
Agreed.
If they decide to assign a Mazel number to it, that's their business.
Agreed.
As long as we have the proper paperwork, we're good to go.
In the end, they're going to come back to this question though, schedule-wise, because everybody's going to want to know how much does it cost and where are you going to put these people. The in-resident portion, same as before, it's going to be mostly lecture, projects, the typical interaction that we have already. The students housed here, we're limited to 16 per class, and we've only got 4 classrooms available at any given time. At the same, we do include our compressed work schedules down Fridays, and we're using a lot of the material from our current course and just transferring it into this new in-resident portion, just making it better. Now, to introduce the phased approach for instructors, this is what I'm proposing across the board so that no one is expecting more than what we're capable of doing come 5 January, okay? What I suggest is that the first thing that we expect from instructors is just to be able to conduct evaluations. So by using those matrices, you'll see that each one of the blocks will have their corresponding 98s. There you go. Which the students will not have visibility on. These 98s and 667s are the same forms that we're accustomed to using for grading students in resident anyway. This will be the document that the instructors will be able to record per course, per class, how the students are progressing. So I suggest that in phase 1, conducting those evaluations would be the bare minimum expectation that we have from the instructors. The second,
Are all your evaluations going to be progress check based, or is it
No.
going to be multiple choice?
no, it was the evaluations that I showed you, those matrices. The
Forum,
disc-
discussion, the group project.
yeah,
Okay, but that's PC basically. Isn't it?
it is a PC form. That's why we're using the 98s, but
Yeah,
it's
right.
not going to have your option A, B, C, D kind of stuff.
Okay.
It's going to be a Saturn on
Now,
Saturn.
one, you said you got the 5 teams. I'm just backing up here now.
Agreed.
You got 5 different teams. What's to prevent somebody assigned to the course going into all 3 and reviewing and taking the best? And
Nothing.
there's no way you can restrict who goes into each project?
No. So we can, as instructors, tell the students, you're assigned to team 1, you're assigned to team 2, but when they get into their wiki pages and they start manipulating the documents, they're just going to have to manage their specific page.
Well, but you can upload, you don't, right? You don't have to necessarily upload onto the discussion board. You can submit it directly to the instructor.
Yes.
The group project. So then they don't copy off each other. You can publish your information out there for the teams to grab from, but the final product should be either secure to the instructor.
I'm just looking at the CCAF angle.
Yeah.
What I'm saying.
Yeah.
They're gonna want to prevent test compromise.
Agreed.
Well, we're not CCAF,
Oh, you're not CCAF?
ACE accredited.
We
We don't
are.
care about that then.
Good luck with that.
We don't need no thinking CCAF.
The second thing that I propose be expected of the instructors coming into the phase 1 is the understanding that TDE is still going to have the responsibility for updating the curriculum just as they do for the in-resident course. So it does not fall on the instructors to update the material, but it falls on TDE. So you all have that version control. And I'm going to talk about how that's going to happen. Phase 2, later, I'm not going to put a date, I'm not going to say it's going to be the next class, but at a later point in time, the instructors would be expected to conduct those DCO facilitation sessions by introducing a block of instruction, by concluding a block of instruction, by introducing group projects, etc.
No longer DCO, Blackboard,
DCO is Defense Connect Online.
but I thought we were using Blackboard.
No. This is their actual communication, verbal communication.
Yeah.
Right, I'll see it.
This right here, what I'm actually using to record what I'm talking about today, is Defense Connect Online. And what I'm suggesting is that Blackboard be the learning management system where we archive the curriculum, but for instructors to be able to actually communicate to the students live, they're going to have to go through Defense Connect Online. Blackboard does not have a live capability.
I thought they were buying that part.
As far as I know, it's not included. If they do, that's great. But right now, all we have is Defense Connect Online.
You don't have to wear your shoes when you do DCO. They can only see from here.
In fact, you don't even have to wear pants. It's too cool.
You can be like a judge.
Hey, I used to do the satellite communications out of Wall Studio. I used to walk in and just, I'm at it, buddy.
All right.
Took your pants off.
We're going to have to edit that part of the video.
I'm not in.
all right.
I'm not in. I'm not in. Let's go back. I know
That's a good
That
visual.
image
we
gets.
had this discussion in the past about point number 2 under phase 1, and I had been a little bit reluctant to, I expressed some reluctance about this, because I've only got one man
Agreed.
in this. Now, of course, this is going to be his primary course if PIMSOC does up and
Yes.
move on, but
So give me your 5 minutes to give you the training on how to do all 3 things that I'm expecting you to do. Okay? So number 1, you're going to be able to hide information. There's obviously information the students don't need to be able to see. For example, the instructor copies of whatever it is that we're using. Project information, lesson plan, POI. There's stuff that they just don't need to see. Hiding information is actually very easy. Whether it's a specific module or it's an entire block. You see these little gray arrows next to them? When you click on it, you just say hide link. And what that does, once it reloads, is it will actually make it disappear to the student.
right.
But the content and everything still remains there. You see this little box with the X through it? For the student, whenever I hit the edit mode off, you'll see that entire block disappears.
Right.
So I propose we use that kind of function to control what material they have available as we're pushing them through synchronously the block material.
Well, that'd be the instructor's responsibility.
And that's where I was going. Shouldn't the SME have more of that? I'm willing to put Brian out there to do most anything he can for you.
Great, thank you.
But there's a limitation in there and actually the course content that we may need to discuss, more in detail.
Okay.
Let's go on to see what you expected.
Just on that concept alone, though, I'm not gonna sit there and wait for day 3, because then the instructor's gotta tell me I gotta do this versus just instructor going in and opening up block 2.
I think as we get
Well,
more
let's get instructions to the
system
instructor.
admin, course admin, and then instructor training, we'll find out what our capabilities even are. But as of right now, the way it looks like they're going to hand out hierarchy, I don't think instructors will even have that capability. So it's going to have to be retained at TDE.
Well, this is one of those, we'll play with it.
Right.
But I think we're going to eventually see this migrate to where it needs to be, and that's at the SME instructor level.
Understood.
And depending on how many hierarchies we have in order to manipulate
Right.
the content of Blackboard.
In the end, this is really simple, and this does not
Well,
take a
understood,
significant amount of
But
time.
for consistency, you're almost gonna have to put this into instructions to the instructor on how to conduct the academic training. Hide this, hide this, hide this.
Right.
And
Like
then
instructional
bring, if they,
So for simplicity's sake, just the way that you already have controls on the electronic documentation that's on our shared drives. There's certain things that instructors don't have access to. And there's certain student rights that you have control of. I'm asking for that same ability, but in the online course. The second thing that I was expecting is the same thing that we already do, and that is anytime that any of us instructors have any updates, whether it be a hyperlink or new information or anything, Same thing. We give that to the TDE, and then they would upload it to the actual sandbox or the Blackboard site. And again, this is as simple as the little black or the little gray circle with the arrow next to any objective or module or anything will have an edit function where you can simply edit that particular module, replace whatever information was there, and upload whatever new information you need. Last but not least, uploading new content that never existed before. When your edit mode is on, and as a system admin or a course admin, you should have this bar which allows you to add in all sorts of crazy stuff that, to be honest with you, I don't even know what it's capable of doing. For consistency's sake and for continuity, I limited the course to basically 3 things. Number 1, an item, a file, or a folder. And to be honest with you, that met my requirements all together. An item, a file, or a folder. You can hyperlink with all of those. You can upload documentation with all of those. You don't have to get into really complicated stuff that Blackboard can let you do. But for now, that met the basic needs. The phase 2 that I talked about was conducting the DCO instruction. So introducing blocks of material, concluding and summarizing blocks of material, it is going to be the responsibility of the instructor to obviously set up that meeting time. So again, that scheduling is going to be an issue when you have students that are spread across the world. I suggest 3 o'clock in the afternoon be the dedicated facilitation time. That way the instructors have time during the day to set up for that facilitation that afternoon, and also have time to go through the lesson plan material or the actual discussion board responses from the students, so they can incorporate that into the facilitated session. Webcams have already been provided. Thankfully, Air University gave us some of theirs, so every one of our instructors has one. All of our classrooms has one. Last but not least, concluding and summarizing, I would suggest that in the distant learning portion, we highlight individual excellence to encourage the students' participation and robust activity. If we simply give students feedback of that they're sat or unsat, we're going to see diminishing returns very quickly. And students are going to participate less and less and less because they're going to push the limit to see how little they can do to get a satisfactory. So in these facilitated sessions, if we highlight students and show what they did and how well they did, I think that would encourage other students to be a little bit more competitive to try to get that prestige. Now, the last phase, and this is the most complicated part, is utilizing DCO for the group projects. So, if I had a number of students, you would see a whole lot more people in my attendee chat, in my attendee box. There is a function, and we have the training recorded, and we've gone through the DCO boot camp, and I've got those already uploaded onto our YouTube channel, if you need to go back for reference. But there is a way to break out into groups in DCO and allow students to collaborate online. Again, the challenge is going to be not all the students are going to have webcams and microphones, but you can do the breakout groups and have them chat. And you can even record or monitor that chat. So this would be, I think, the highest level and the most we could ever expect from our instructors to do in a live session. But what we're encouraged to do, and this is across the board, Air University and any of the colleges that are using blended learning right now, you're going to want to limit that group project time frame to a half hour at most. Okay? Students are going to get burned out on their online chatting as they're going back in their group projects. So whatever project that you're going to put into that group setting, it has to be something that they can accomplish within 30 minutes. Past that 30 minutes, they're going to collaborate online on their wiki page, via email, phone calls, whatever they want. But in a live DCO session, instructors should only be expected to facilitate for 30 minutes or less.
Along that same line, and this was just recently, but again, the instructor refresher course, the supervisor refresher course, they had that where we could break out into groups in DCO, but they also gave us the ability to call in to a central number, and each group of students has been broken out and assigned to a team and had their own number to call into. I'm not sure exactly how you get those numbers. I haven't dealt with that yet. I think Dave and maybe some others have, but that might be an option also.
That's great. And we do have that phone tree capability even here at Keesler Air Force Base. If you call Comm Squadron, they've got a list of, I can't remember what they're called, but it's basically the same thing that Mr. Click was dialing into, a spider
Right.
number, a conference call number. And you can sign up at a specific day and time for a certain number, and ahead of time, if you want, assign the students to call the specific number for their group discussion.
Right.
And that is a capability.
That was much better than trying to chat because
Agreed.
that just,
But in the end, what I'm suggesting to everybody across the board is that that should not be expected from the instructors on day one, January 5th. There's no way we're going to be able to pump that out with the first version of the course. This is phase 3 when instructors have everything else kind of under their, they're comfortable with it.
You want to walk before you run.
Exactly. Last but not least, hosting live subject matter experts in the DCO is what I consider a phase 3 type capability. I know we've got enough material and enough recordings to use in the course right now that we shouldn't expect our instructors from day one to be able to schedule and then facilitate live subject matter expert recordings during the blended portion of the, or during the online portion of the course. I think that's a phase 3 capability that will integrate when it becomes available, but it shouldn't be expected of the instructors from day one.
Now, the DCO, the limited DCO experience I have, they have a facilitator along with the instructor.
Yes.
What are we talking here? What kind of group size are we looking at for this DCO portion? That's what I was referring to when I said blackboard.
Right.
What group sizes you got? You went completely off. It was my understanding, blackboard, they bought the whole shebang. Okay.
If that is, that's great. I don't know.
Which means that we won't need DCO, because the DCO contract, from what I understand, is supposed to go away. Or needs to be renewed, one or the other. And they don't know what they're gonna do yet, but they went with the blackboard on this pilot. Apparently, you've got DCO capabilities in blackboard.
I don't know where
You didn't hear
that, I don't know where that came from.
Well, that was my understanding when I talked to you.
Anybody?
For now, what we've prepared for is using DCO, and we've gotten training on it. We've gotten everybody set up in case that's all we have. Again, I think this is just one of many different ways that we can communicate with the students. It would be nice to have, but I don't think it's required to have.
And they should, if that's true, they should include that with their user training, which will come in, I don't know, September of next year. You know, right?
Just in time.
That was pessimistic.
That was
That was terrible.
Still with straight face.
Wow.
Yes, you did.
He simply offered them.
You did.
In the end, I covered a lot of information. I know there was a little bit that was training, but it was also just showing you where we are. In the end, I want you all to know that even though I'm leaving, I did not want this to be the ugly baby that I leave behind, okay? I honestly wanted to give you a first draft that you make yours, okay? There's nothing in here that is so concrete that you have to say, oh, well, he left it, so it must stay that way. No, this is yours now, so please revise it, change it, make it what you want it to be.
You sound like AATC now.
I mean it, because if you think that what I wrote was law, then no, you're mistaken. Okay? You guys have been in ATC much longer than I have. You know the ISD process better than anybody. You meet the needs of the career field, and that's all they're looking for. But this gives you at least a basic starting point, and it's built. It's taken a month, but it's there. So we've got 2 months until showtime, basically. Any questions?
So for you, we got a little longer. So we're not gonna.
Yeah.
For our DCO, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking weather.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's solid. All the things that you were talking about there, I mean, that we've been visualizing and chatting about and jotting down, I mean, it's following exactly where we've been going with it, you know. But you develop all your curriculum already too, right? Are you well on your way to finishing the curriculum?
POIs are done, content's loaded for the distant learning portion. The in-resident course, we're really just slimming down what we already have. So it's cutting out the fat. Anything that you as instructors do not want to teach, and it doesn't relate to anything that's in the CTS, cut it out.
Why are you bringing her at all
We
then?
want-
You couldn't do everything
No.
DCO?
No,
You're gonna have face-to-face.
absolutely. There's no way we could get our teams to get through the projects and for the students to understand the sort of level that we're expecting them to if we only did online. There's no way. The majority of the course has to be here in resident.